If a woman looks terrified while pretending to smile, someone taught her that fear was normal. I learned that lesson at 25, standing beneath a crystal chandelier worth more than my student loans, wearing a black cocktail dress I'd rented for $90, and shoes that were already cutting into my heels after 20 minutes. The Grand Aurelia Hotel smelled like expensive perfume, champagne, and money so old it no longer needed to announce itself. I didn't belong there. Every woman in the ballroom looked polished and untouchable, wrapped in silk and diamonds beneath the soft golden lights. Meanwhile, I was Claire Bennett from Brooklyn, covering a shift for my friend Jenna because she had the flu and couldn't work the gala. My entire bank account had $43 in it. One catering paycheck mattered. So I balanced silver trays, smiled at strangers, and tried not to think about the fact that my ex-boyfriend had called me 7 times that morning from blocked numbers. The violin quartet played near the marble staircase while Manhattan glittered beyond the floor-to-ceiling windows like another universe entirely. I kept my head down. That was the plan. Survive the night. Go home. Forget Ryan Keller ever existed. Then I saw him. My stomach dropped so fast I nearly lost grip of the champagne tray in my hands. Ryan stood near the bar in a charcoal gray suit, laughing with 2 men I didn't recognize, one hand wrapped around a whiskey glass like he owned the room. My chest tightened instantly. Funny how trauma works. Some people hear thunder and remember storms. I saw Ryan and remembered apologizing for things that weren't my fault. I ducked my head immediately, turning toward the kitchen entrance before he could notice me, but panic had already started crawling beneath my skin. My pulse throbbed in my throat. Not here. Please not here. I moved faster through the crowd, weaving between guests, trying to disappear behind servers carrying lobster hors d'oeuvres and champagne buckets. Maybe if I clocked out early, maybe if I left through the employee entrance, maybe, Claire? The sound of my name froze me mid-step. God. No. I turned slowly, and there he was, smiling like we were old friends instead of a mistake I'd spent 6 months recovering from. Wow, Ryan said, walking toward me. You look good. My fingers tightened around the tray hard enough to hurt. He looked exactly the same. Blonde hair styled perfectly. Expensive watch. Charming smile polished bright enough to fool people who didn't know better. Ryan, I managed quietly. What are you doing here? Business fundraiser. His eyes moved slowly over my dress, my heels, my face. Didn't expect to see you working events now. There it was. That tone. Sweet on the surface. Sharp underneath. The same voice that used to make me question myself. I took a small step backward. I'm busy. Claire. He lowered his voice. You disappeared. My heartbeat sped up. I left. Without a conversation. There was nothing left to say. For 1 second, the smile slipped from his face. Just 1 second. But I saw it. The control underneath. The anger. The reason I used to lock my apartment door twice before bed. You still overreacting? He asked softly. Because I came here to apologize. I knew that game too. Apologies that sounded kind until you noticed they blamed you for needing them. I looked around quickly, searching for an escape route through the crowd, but Ryan stepped closer. Not enough to touch me. Just enough to remind me he could. Dance with me, he said. Ryan, no. One dance. I said no. His jaw flexed slightly. You always make scenes in public. Heat rushed into my face. My breathing turned uneven. Around us, wealthy strangers laughed beneath chandeliers, while waiters floated past carrying trays of sparkling drinks. Nobody noticed the terror rising inside me. Nobody ever did. Ryan reached toward my wrist, and instinct took over before logic could catch up. I turned away from him too quickly and collided straight into someone solid. A black suit, broad shoulders, the faint scent of cedarwood and expensive cologne. Strong hands caught my elbows before I could fall. Sorry, I breathed automatically, still panicking, still trying not to look behind me. Then I looked up, and everything stopped. The man staring down at me looked like the kind of trouble people wrote warnings about. Tall, dark hair brushed neatly back, gray eyes so cold they almost looked silver beneath the ballroom lights. He wasn't smiling, wasn't even surprised, just watching me with a calmness that somehow made the entire room feel quieter. Behind him stood 2 men in tailored black suits near the wall, both suddenly alert. Waiting. Watching him. Waiting for instructions. I should have walked away. Instead, I heard my own voice betray me in a whisper barely louder than my heartbeat. Please, just dance with me. My ex is here. For one terrifying second, I thought he would push me away. A man like him did not look like he tolerated interruptions from nervous strangers in borrowed dresses. But instead of stepping back, his eyes flicked once over my shoulder toward Ryan, and something unreadable darkened in his expression. Then his hands settled against the small of my back. Calm. Certain. Keep breathing, he said quietly. His voice was deep, smooth, controlled in a way that made me instantly aware of how out of control I felt. Before I could answer, he guided me onto the dance floor like we had planned it together. The orchestra shifted into a slower song, violins melting through the ballroom, while guests drifted aside to make room for us. I could still feel Ryan staring. Feel the pressure of his anger from across the room like heat against my skin. My pulse would not slow down. You are shaking, the stranger observed. I swallowed hard. I am fine. One dark eyebrow lifted slightly. People who are fine usually do not ask random men to rescue them. Heat rushed into my cheeks. Embarrassment mixed with panic until I could barely think straight. I just needed a minute. From him, his hand remained steady against my back as he guided me through another turn. He moved flawlessly, effortlessly, like a man used to control. I finally looked directly at him, really looked this time. Up close, he was even more intimidating. Early 30s maybe. Sharp jawline. Gray suit tailored so perfectly it looked dangerous somehow. A silver watch glinted beneath the ballroom lights. No wedding ring. Not that it mattered. Men like him did not exist anywhere near. Women like me unless something had gone very wrong. You do not have to answer, he added when I stayed quiet. I already know the type. My throat tightened unexpectedly. There was no mockery in his voice. No curiosity either. Just certainty. Behind us, glasses clinked and distant laughter echoed beneath the chandeliers, but the space around him felt strangely insulated from the rest of the room. Quiet. Controlled. Safe in a way that made no sense. Thank you, I whispered finally, for helping me. I have not helped you yet. The words should have sounded arrogant. Somehow they did not. We turned again, and this time I caught sight of Ryan standing near the edge of the dance floor, watching us. His expression had changed completely. No anger now. Something else. Unease. I frowned slightly. Ryan was not intimidated easily. Do you know him? I asked before I could stop myself. The stranger glanced toward Ryan for half a second. No. Then why does he suddenly look nervous? He did not answer immediately. Instead, his gaze drifted across the ballroom as though checking exits, windows, people. I noticed then what I had missed before. The men near the walls were not guests. They were watching him. Every movement. Every entrance. One touched his earpiece subtly when our eyes met. My stomach tightened. Who are you? I asked quietly. For the first time, something almost like amusement touched the corner of his mouth. Tonight, he said softly. Just a man dancing with a frightened woman. Before I could respond, Ryan started walking toward us. Fast. My entire body tensed instinctively. The stranger felt it immediately. Easy, he murmured near my ear. He does not get to frighten you while you are with me. The words should not have affected me. They absolutely did. Ryan stopped 3 feet away, jaw tight enough to crack stone. Claire. I stepped back automatically, but the stranger's hand remained at my waist, grounding me before panic could fully take over. Ryan's eyes dropped to that hand. His expression darkened. I think there is some confusion here, he said tightly, forcing a smile toward the stranger. Claire and I were having a private conversation. It did not look private, the stranger replied calmly. Ryan laughed once without humor. And you are? The ballroom seemed quieter suddenly. I noticed conversations slowing nearby, guests watching without pretending not to. The stranger finally turned fully toward Ryan, and the change in the atmosphere was instant. Cold. Sharp. Controlled. Someone she asked for help, he said. Ryan's jaw flexed. Claire gets emotional sometimes. I hated how familiar those words felt. Small. Dismissive. Designed to make me sound irrational. The stranger noticed my reaction immediately. His eyes shifted briefly toward me before returning to Ryan. Interesting, he said softly. Because from where I am standing, she looks afraid. And men usually earn that kind of fear. Ryan took a step forward. Listen, I do not know who you think you are, but this is between me and my girlfriend. Ex-girlfriend, I said quickly. Ryan ignored me completely. The stranger did not. His gaze stayed on mine for one long second before he spoke again. If she says it is over, he said quietly, then it is over. Ryan opened his mouth to answer, But movement near the ballroom entrance suddenly caught my attention. 6 men in black suits entered at once. Not loudly, not aggressively, but the effect rippled through the room instantly. Guests moved aside without being asked. Hotel security straightened nervously. One of the violinists missed a note, and every single one of those men looked directly at the stranger beside me. The moment those men entered the ballroom, Ryan stepped backward. It was subtle, barely noticeable unless you were already watching him closely the way fear teaches you to watch people. But I saw it. The confidence drained from his face so quickly it almost made me dizzy. Around us, conversations lowered into cautious murmurs. Wealthy donors and socialites suddenly found their champagne glasses very interesting. Nobody looked directly at the man beside me anymore. Nobody except me. "Who are they?" I whispered. The stranger's hand never left my waist. "Security. For you." His gray eyes met mine calmly. Usually. The words settled strangely in my chest. Like danger spoken softly. Enough to sound reasonable. Ryan cleared his throat, trying to recover whatever pride the room had just stolen from him. "Claire," he said carefully now. "Can we talk privately?" I almost laughed at the change in his voice. 10 minutes ago he had sounded possessive, confident. Now he sounded cautious, measured, afraid of saying the wrong thing. The stranger noticed too. I could tell by the faint shift in his expression. "She already answered you," he said quietly. Ryan forced another smile. "Look, man, I do not know what kind of misunderstanding this is, but Claire and I have history. That tends to happen between people," the stranger replied smoothly. Ryan's jaw tightened. "You should stay out of this." And yet, the stranger said softly, "Here I am." Something about the way he spoke made silence spread outward through the ballroom like ripples through water. No raised voice, no threats. Somehow that made him more intimidating. Ryan glanced toward the men near the entrance again before looking back at me. "Claire, you are embarrassing yourself." There it was. That familiar twist of shame designed to make me doubt my own reality. I felt my breathing hitch slightly. Beside me, the stranger noticed immediately. "Careful," he said without taking his eyes off Ryan. "You are running out of chances to sound civilized." Ryan stared at him for a long second. Then something changed in his face. Recognition. Real recognition this time. His skin visibly paled beneath the ballroom lights. "Wait," he said slowly. "You are." He stopped himself. The stranger said nothing. But suddenly Ryan looked like a man standing too close to the edge of a building. "I did not realize this was your guest," Ryan added quickly. "Guest, not stranger anymore." The shift was immediate and almost pathetic. My stomach tightened harder. Who was this man? Ryan swallowed once before looking at me again. "Claire, I think maybe we should continue this conversation another time." Another time. As though he had not cornered me 5 minutes earlier. As though fear had not completely rearranged his personality. The stranger tilted his head slightly. A wise decision. Ryan nodded too quickly. "Of course." Then he left. Just like that. No argument. No dramatic scene. One nervous glance toward the men near the entrance, and he disappeared into the crowd faster than I had ever seen him move in my life. I stared after him in stunned silence while the orchestra continued playing as though nothing strange had happened at all. The stranger finally looked down at me. "You can breathe now." I had not realized I was holding my breath until then. Air rushed painfully back into my lungs. "What just happened?" I asked quietly. He studied me for a moment before answering. "Your ex made the smart choice." "No," I whispered. "I mean, who are you?" For the first time since I collided into him, he looked almost tired. Not physically. Something deeper than that. Like a man exhausted by the reactions his existence caused in other people. One of the men near the wall approached slowly. Tall, broad shoulders, earpiece visible beneath closely cropped dark hair. "Mr. Cross," he said respectfully. "The mayor just arrived." Mr. Cross. The name hit the room harder than thunder. I saw it happen around me instantly. Guests pretending not to stare. Hotel staff lowering their eyes. A woman near the champagne tower whispering something urgently to her husband. And suddenly I understood. Not fully, but enough. The stranger beside me was not simply wealthy. Wealthy men did not make entire ballrooms nervous. "Adrian Cross," I repeated softly before I could stop myself. His gaze returned to mine, unreadable as winter skies. "Claire Bennett," he replied just as quietly. My blood went cold. I never told him my last name. He noticed the exact second I realized it too. Relax, he said calmly. I asked one of the staff members. That is somehow not comforting. To my surprise, the corner of his mouth moved slightly. Not quite a smile, but close enough to completely ruin my ability to think clearly for a second. Fair point. The man beside the wall waited silently for instructions. Adrian finally glanced toward him. 5 minutes. Yes, sir. Sir. Not Mr. Not Adrian. Sir. The bodyguard stepped away immediately. I looked back at Adrian slowly. You are important. That depends who you ask. Ryan. Looked terrified of you. Adrian's expression darkened slightly. Your ex has decent survival instincts. The honesty of the answer sent a chill down my spine. Somewhere across the ballroom, cameras flashed as politicians and donors greeted one another beneath gold chandeliers and soft violin music. But standing beside Adrian Cross felt like stepping into another world entirely. Colder, sharper, more dangerous. And somehow, for the first time all night, I no longer felt afraid. I should have walked away the moment I learned his name. Any smart woman would have. But the problem with fear is that safety becomes addictive once you finally feel it. And standing beside Adrian Cross felt safe in the most dangerous way possible. The orchestra shifted into another slow song, while conversations cautiously returned around us, though the room still moved differently now. Controlled. Careful. Like everyone was aware of him, even when pretending not to be. Adrian released my waist slowly, his hand lingering just long enough for me to notice the sudden absence of warmth when he stepped back. You should sit down, he said. You look overwhelmed. That obvious? Only to me. The answer landed harder than it should have. I glanced toward the ballroom entrance where his security remained stationed with quiet precision. Nobody smiled. Nobody relaxed. They watched every corner of the room the way lifeguards watched rough water. Are they always around you? I asked quietly. Adrian followed my gaze briefly, usually closer than I would prefer. That sounds exhausting. Something flickered in his expression then. Surprise maybe. Most people probably asked if it was dangerous. Not lonely. It can be, he admitted. Before I could respond, a sharply dressed older man approached us carrying 2 champagne glasses. Silver hair. Expensive tuxedo. The kind of confidence that comes from decades around powerful people. Adrian, he greeted smoothly. The mayor is asking for you. His eyes shifted toward me with polite curiosity. And who is this? Adrian took 1 champagne glass without looking away from me. Claire Bennett. Not a server. Not nobody. He said my full name like it belonged. In rooms like this, the older man smiled faintly. A pleasure. Claire, Adrian said calmly. This is Vincent Moretti. The name sounded important even before I noticed the subtle reactions around us. Nearby guests straightened immediately upon hearing it. Vincent offered me the second champagne glass. Anyone capable of stealing Adrian's attention during a fundraiser deserves respect. Heat rose into my cheeks. I think I accidentally interrupted his evening. Most people are too intimidated to interrupt him at all, Vincent replied dryly. Adrian exhaled softly through his nose, almost amused. You enjoy causing problems. Only when they are entertaining. Vincent glanced toward the ballroom entrance. The mayor has already asked twice. Adrian's expression cooled slightly. Then he can survive another 5 minutes. Vincent raised one eyebrow before looking back at me knowingly. Interesting. Then he disappeared into the crowd as smoothly as he arrived. I stared after him before looking back at Adrian. People listen to you. Sometimes. Ryan looked like he saw a ghost. Adrian swirled the champagne in his glass once. Your ex values self-preservation more than pride. That is rare. I studied him carefully beneath the chandelier lights. Every movement looked controlled, deliberate. Nothing rushed. Nothing uncertain. Men like Ryan filled rooms by demanding attention. Adrian did it by existing quietly enough that everyone else adjusted around him. You still look nervous, he observed. I laughed softly before I could stop myself. I am standing next to the most intimidating man I have ever met. And yet you are still standing here. Fair point. Across the ballroom, couples drifted beneath soft golden lights while city rain streaked against the tall windows overlooking Manhattan. Somewhere nearby, expensive heels clicked across marble floors. Waiters carried trays through clusters of politicians and donors pretending their world was clean and polished. But around Adrian, everything felt sharper somehow. More honest. Can I ask you something? I said carefully. You can ask. Will you answer honestly? His gray eyes held mine for a long second. Probably. Not. I should not have smiled. I definitely should not have enjoyed the fact that he noticed when I did. Why did you help me? I asked quietly. You could have ignored me. Adrian looked toward the ballroom windows for a moment before answering. Because when you grabbed my arm, he said softly, you looked like someone trying very hard not to panic. My chest tightened unexpectedly. Nobody had ever described me that accurately before, not even when I was falling apart. Most people think I overreact, I admitted before I could stop myself. Adrian's expression darkened slightly. People who have never been cornered usually say that. Silence settled between us then. Not uncomfortable, just heavy with things neither of us fully understood yet. I glanced down at the champagne glass still untouched in my hands. I should probably get back to work. Do you want to? The question caught me off guard. Because no one had asked what I wanted in a very long time. Ryan used to tell me what was reasonable, what was smart, what was dramatic. Somewhere along the way, my own instincts stopped sounding trustworthy. But standing here beside Adrian, something unfamiliar stirred quietly inside me. Confidence maybe, or simply relief. Not really, I admitted softly. Adrian nodded once like he already knew the answer. Then his gaze shifted past me toward the ballroom entrance again, and the warmth disappeared from his expression so quickly it sent a chill across my skin. Stay here, he said calmly. I turned instinctively toward the doors just as Ryan walked back into the ballroom. The moment I saw Ryan walk back into the ballroom, my stomach twisted hard enough to hurt. But this time he was not alone. Two men followed several steps behind him, wearing matching navy suits and identical expressions that screamed expensive lawyers or private security. Ryan's confidence had returned too quickly. That scared me more than his anger earlier. Adrian noticed my reaction instantly. You know that look? He said quietly. What look? The one people get right before they expect trouble. My fingers tightened around the champagne glass. He does not usually give up. Adrian's eyes remained fixed on Ryan as he crossed the ballroom toward us again. Neither do I. The simple certainty in his voice should not have calmed me. Somehow it did anyway. Around us, the fundraiser continued beneath glittering chandeliers and soft violin music, but tension had started spreading quietly through the room again. Guests noticed Ryan's return. More importantly, they noticed Adrian standing still instead of leaving. One of Adrian's security men shifted subtly near the entrance, speaking low into his earpiece. Adrian, Ryan called as he approached, forcing a smile that did not reach his eyes. Sorry about before. I think we got off on the wrong foot. Adrian said nothing. Ryan glanced toward me briefly before continuing. Claire and I have complicated history. You mentioned that, Adrian replied calmly. Ryan laughed nervously. Right. Look, I just do not want misunderstandings. Misunderstandings. Such a polished word for months of fear and manipulation. I felt myself shrinking internally the way I always used to around Ryan. Smaller, quieter, easier to manage. Adrian noticed before I even realized it myself. Claire, he said softly without looking away from Ryan. Look at me. I did. Immediately. His expression remained calm, controlled. Do you want this conversation to continue? The question stunned me. Ryan looked irritated instantly. Claire does not need permission to speak. Adrian finally turned toward him then, gray eyes cold enough to silence the entire sentence still waiting in Ryan's throat. I was not asking you. The ballroom suddenly felt very quiet. I swallowed hard and forced myself to answer honestly. No, I whispered. Adrian nodded once. Then we are done here. Ryan stared at him in disbelief. You cannot seriously think she is leaving with you. My heartbeat skipped. Leaving? I opened my mouth to protest, but Adrian spoke first. That depends entirely on what she wants. Ryan laughed sharply. You do not even know her. I know enough. You met her 20 minutes ago. Adrian's expression never changed. And yet I still seem to understand the word no better than you do. Ryan's face flushed red beneath the ballroom lights. For one dangerous second, I thought he might lose his temper completely. But then he noticed something behind Adrian. I followed his gaze instinctively. The mayor of New York had just entered the ballroom, surrounded by donors and hotel security. Conversations shifted immediately. Cameras flashed. But what caught my attention was the way the mayor stopped the second he saw Adrian. Then, unbelievably, the mayor walked directly toward us. Ryan went pale again. Adrian. The mayor greeted smoothly, extending his hand. You disappeared before I could thank you for your contribution tonight. Contribution. Right. This was not just some wealthy businessman. This was someone the most powerful people in the city treated carefully. Adrian shook his hand once. You seem to be surviving without me. The mayor laughed politely before finally noticing me standing there frozen beside him. And who is this? Before I could panic, Adrian answered smoothly. Claire Bennett. Again, my full name spoken like it mattered. The mayor smiled warmly. Anyone capable of keeping Adrian at one event longer than 30 minutes deserves an award. Ryan looked physically ill now. The mayor finally noticed him too. Ryan Keller, right? Ryan straightened immediately. Yes, sir. The mayor nodded distractedly before returning his full attention to Adrian. We still need to discuss the waterfront project. Adrian's tone cooled slightly. Tomorrow. Of course. The mayor's gaze shifted between us one last time before he smiled knowingly. Enjoy your evening. Then he moved away into the crowd surrounded by flashing cameras and political donors. I stared after him in complete disbelief. Ryan looked at Adrian like a man realizing far too late that he had wandered into deep water without knowing how to swim. Claire, Ryan said carefully now. I think maybe we should talk tomorrow instead. Tomorrow. Not tonight. Not now that he understood exactly whose attention I had accidentally captured. Adrian finally stepped slightly closer beside me. Not possessive, not controlling, just present enough that Ryan noticed immediately. I think, Adrian said softly, you should stop deciding what Claire needs. Ryan's jaw tightened. You think this is funny? Adrian's gaze never wavered. No. I think she spent too long apologizing for your behavior. The accuracy of the statement hit me like cold rain. Ryan looked at me then, really looked at me, and for the first time all night I saw uncertainty in his eyes. Because I was not shrinking anymore. I was not apologizing. I was standing beside the most dangerous man in the room, and somehow, I finally remembered what it felt like not to be afraid. Fear changes shape when you stop feeding it. Mine used to sound like Ryan's voice in the middle of the night, calm and disappointed, explaining why every problem in our relationship somehow belonged to me. But standing beside Adrian Cross beneath golden chandeliers and violin music, I realized something terrifying. Ryan was no longer the scariest man in the room, and somehow that made me feel safer. Ryan adjusted the cuff of his suit slowly, forcing composure back onto his face, while wealthy donors pretended not to watch us from nearby tables. Claire, he said carefully, you are overreacting because you are upset. Adrian exhaled softly beside me. Not annoyed. Almost bored. That sentence alone tells me everything I need to know about you. Ryan ignored him completely. You disappear for 6 months, block my calls, and now suddenly I am the villain because I came to apologize? My stomach tightened. There it was again. The twisting of reality until I questioned my own memory. Adrian noticed the shift in my breathing immediately. Do not do that, he said quietly. Ryan frowned. Do what? Adrian's gray eyes locked onto him with frightening calm. Try to convince her that your behavior becomes reasonable if you say it gently enough. Silence spread around us again. Even the violin music seemed distant now beneath the pressure building in the ballroom. Ryan laughed once without humor. You think you know everything because she played scared for 5 minutes? No, Adrian replied. I think frightened people recognize relief very quickly. The words hit somewhere painfully deep inside me. Because relief was exactly what this felt like. Not romance. Not fantasy. Relief. The exhausting. Pressure inside my chest had loosened for the first time in months. Ryan looked at me sharply. Claire, seriously? You are just going to stand there while this stranger talks about me like I am dangerous? Before I could answer, Adrian spoke again. The interesting thing about dangerous men, he said smoothly, is that they usually hate being recognized. Ryan stepped closer instinctively. Immediately, 2 of Adrian's security men moved at the edge of the ballroom. Not aggressively, just enough that everyone noticed. Ryan noticed too. He stopped walking. Adrian never even glanced toward his security. You should go home, Adrian continued calmly. Tonight does not seem to be improving for you. Ryan's jaw flexed hard enough to show. You think money makes you untouchable? Adrian tilted his head slightly. No, experience does. A chill ran through me at the answer. Because he did not sound arrogant. He sounded factual. Ryan looked around the ballroom then, maybe realizing too late that nobody was coming to support him. The mayor respected Adrian. Hotel security deferred to him. Powerful men watched him carefully. Even the air around him felt controlled. Ryan finally looked back at me, and for the first time all night his expression softened slightly. "Claire," he said quietly, "you know me." The sentence almost broke my resolve, because part of me did know him. The version from the beginning. The charming version. The man who brought coffee to my apartment and kissed my forehead while I studied late at night. Fear is confusing that way. It never erases the good memories completely. Adrian must have noticed the conflict in my face because his voice lowered when he spoke next. "You do not owe loyalty to someone who made you feel small." My throat tightened instantly. Ryan scoffed. And now he is giving relationship advice? Adrian finally turned fully toward me, then instead of Ryan. The shift in attention felt intimate enough to steal my breath. "Claire," he said quietly, "look at me for a second." I did. Immediately. "Do you want to leave?" The question sounded simple. But nobody had asked me what I wanted all night except him. Ryan always demanded explanations. Adrian only asked for truth. "Yes," I whispered. Adrian nodded once. "Then we leave." Ryan's expression darkened instantly. "You are seriously leaving with him?" "I am seriously leaving you," I answered before fear could stop me. The words shocked even me. Ryan stared at me in complete disbelief. "Claire." "No," my voice shook slightly, but I kept going anyway. "I spent too long trying to make you comfortable while I was miserable." The ballroom had gone completely silent around us now. I barely noticed. Ryan looked furious for one dangerous second before catching himself again. "You are making a mistake." Adrian picked up my untouched champagne glass from the nearby table and handed it calmly to a passing waiter without taking his eyes off Ryan. "Possibly," he said smoothly. "But at least this mistake knows how to hear the word no." A few nearby guests actually looked away to hide smiles. Ryan's face reddened instantly. Then Adrian did something unexpected. He held out his hand toward me. Not demanding, not possessive, just waiting. An offer. A choice. My heartbeat thundered painfully against my ribs while every instinct I had battled for months screamed at me to avoid making Ryan angry. But another feeling pushed through the fear now. Exhaustion. I was tired of apologizing for surviving. Slowly, I placed my hand in Adrian's. His fingers closed gently around mine, steady and warm. Ryan looked at our joined hands like he wanted to argue again. Then his eyes lifted toward Adrian's face. Whatever he saw there made him stop. Without another word, Ryan turned and walked away into the crowd beneath the glittering ballroom lights. And for the first time in a very long time, I did not feel like running after someone who left. The rain had started by the time we left the ballroom. Manhattan shimmered silver beyond the hotel entrance, headlights stretching across wet streets while black umbrellas appeared instantly around Adrian like shadows trained to move with him. Everything about his world operated differently from mine. Faster, quieter, more controlled. One of the security men opened the hotel doors while another spoke softly into an earpiece near the line of waiting SUVs outside. I stopped walking beneath the marble awning. Adrian noticed immediately. "What is wrong?" he asked. The city wind lifted strands of my hair across my face while taxis hissed through rainwater at the curb below. "I think I finally understand why everyone was looking at you like that tonight." Adrian's expression stayed unreadable. "And how was that?" "Like you were someone people fear." The truth settled heavily between us. He did not deny it. Somehow that honesty unsettled me more than excuses would have. Around us, wealthy guests exited the gala laughing beneath umbrellas, pretending not to stare at Adrian standing beside me in his charcoal suit, with half the city apparently rearranging itself around his existence. "Claire," he said quietly, "fear and respect tend to look similar from a distance. Which one is it with you?" He held my gaze for a long second while rain tapped softly against black cars lined along the curb. "That depends who you ask." There it was again. Answers that revealed everything and nothing at the same time. One of the security men approached carefully. "The car is ready, sir." "Sir." "Always, sir." Adrian nodded once before looking back at me. "I can have someone drive you home." The offer sounded polite, reasonable, safe, which was exactly why panic suddenly flared inside me again. Because I had almost forgotten who he was while standing beside him upstairs beneath soft music and chandelier light. But now I saw the full picture clearly. The security detail, the fear in Ryan's face, the politicians treating him carefully, the whispered name that changed the atmosphere of an entire ballroom. Adrian Cross was not simply powerful. He was dangerous in ways I probably could not even understand yet. I took a small step backward instinctively. Adrian noticed. Of course he did. His expression changed almost imperceptibly. Not anger. Something quieter than that. Disappointment, maybe. You are afraid of me now, he said calmly. It was not a question. I wrapped my arms around myself against the cold rain. I do not know what you are. That is fair. The honesty caught me off guard again. Most powerful men filled silence by defending themselves. Adrian seemed perfectly comfortable standing inside it. People talk about you, I admitted softly. I have heard things. Most of them are probably unpleasant. You are not denying any of it. Adrian glanced briefly toward the rain-soaked street before answering. Claire, I am not a politician. I do not survive by pretending to be harmless. The words should have frightened me more than they did. Instead, they felt strangely honest compared to years of Ryan disguising cruelty as concern. Adrian at least looked dangerous while he stood in front of me. That should scare me, I whispered. Maybe it should. His calmness made my heartbeat uneven again. No manipulation. No pressure. Just truth delivered quietly enough to matter. I looked toward the waiting black SUV where another security guard stood holding an umbrella beside the open door. This is insane. I murmured more to myself than him. 2 hours ago, I was carrying champagne trays trying not to embarrass myself at work. Adrian's gaze softened slightly. And now? I laughed nervously once. Now I am standing in the rain arguing with the most intimidating man in New York. Something almost warm flickered briefly in his eyes. You are arguing surprisingly well. The compliment caught me completely off guard. Ryan used to call me emotional anytime I disagreed with him. Difficult. Dramatic. Adrian simply looked at me like my thoughts deserved space in the conversation. The realization unsettled me more than it should have. I should go home, I said quietly. Adrian nodded immediately. All right. No argument. No pressure. Somehow that made leaving harder. Rain drummed softly against the awning above us while Manhattan glowed gold and silver through the storm. I started stepping backward toward the curb where taxis crawled through traffic below. Then Adrian spoke again. Claire. I stopped instantly. His gray eyes held mine steadily beneath the city lights. You do not have to be frightened of me to stay cautious, he said quietly. Both things can exist at once. The sentence landed somewhere deep inside me because it sounded painfully true. About him. About Ryan. About survival. Itself. One of the security men opened a black umbrella above Adrian, while rain continued falling around us in silver streaks. Good night, Claire Bennett. My name sounded different when he said it, like something carefully remembered instead of casually used. I swallowed hard. Good night, Adrian. Then I turned and walked into the rain alone. But halfway down the hotel steps, I made the mistake of glancing back. Adrian was still standing beneath the marble entrance watching me disappear into the storm. And somehow the saddest part was realizing I already missed the feeling of safety that came with his attention. Rain in Manhattan always sounded louder after midnight. Maybe because the city finally stopped pretending to be busy long enough for people to hear themselves think. I stood beneath the glowing hotel awning for almost 30 seconds after leaving Adrian behind, trying to calm the strange ache building in my chest. Then my phone buzzed. Unknown number. My stomach tightened instantly. I knew before answering. Claire. Ryan's voice slid through the speaker smooth and familiar enough to make my heartbeat stumble. I kept walking toward the curb anyway, heels splashing through shallow rainwater. Do not call me again. You embarrassed me tonight. There it was. Not concern. Not apology. Pride. I closed my eyes briefly. Ryan, I am done. Because of him. A taxi passed too quickly beside the curb, spraying cold water across my legs. Somewhere behind me, hotel security shifted near the entrance while black SUVs idled beneath the rain. Because of me, I answered quietly. Silence crackled across the line for one long second. Then Ryan laughed softly. You think a man like Adrian Cross cares about girls like you? The words landed exactly where he intended them to. Old insecurities. Old wounds. Ryan always knew where my confidence bruised easiest. Goodbye, Ryan. Claire, wait. His voice sharpened instantly when he realized I meant it. You do not understand what kind of people you are dealing with. I stopped walking. Rain slid cold down the back of my neck while taxis crawled through traffic beneath glowing streetlights. And you do? Enough to know you. Should stay away from him. I almost laughed at the irony. You lost the right to warn me about dangerous men. Then I hung up before fear could weaken me again. My hands shook slightly afterward. Not because I regretted it. Because standing up for yourself after months of shrinking feels unnatural at first. I headed toward the side street where rideshare pickups usually stopped, hugging my thin coat tighter against the rain. The further I got from the hotel entrance, the quieter the city became. Fewer cameras, less light. The cold wind pushed rain sideways between buildings while distant sirens echoed somewhere downtown. Then headlights appeared behind me. Slow, deliberate. A black sedan rolled quietly along the curb, matching my pace. Every muscle in my body tightened instantly. The rear passenger window lowered halfway. Ryan leaned toward the opening. Get in the car. Ice spread through my chest so fast it hurt. No, Claire, stop being dramatic. Leave me alone. Rain streaked across his face beneath the streetlights, while irritation slowly replaced the polished charm he wore inside the ballroom. You are seriously choosing that man over me? I am choosing myself over you. His expression hardened immediately. You think he protected you tonight because he is kind? I stepped backward toward the sidewalk edge, pulse hammering painfully. Ryan, men like Adrian Cross do not help people for free. The city suddenly felt too quiet around us. Too empty. Ryan opened the car door and stepped out into the rain. Expensive shoes splashing through puddles while his coat darkened beneath the storm. Come home, he said more softly now. You are upset. We can fix this. My heartbeat turned uneven, because part of me still remembered the version of him who used to say things like that before everything became exhausting. Before every disagreement somehow became my fault. No, I whispered again. Ryan moved closer. Not aggressive. Somehow worse than aggressive. Familiar. Careful. The same controlled pressure that had trapped me for months without ever leaving visible scars. Claire, look at me. I hated that my body still reacted automatically to his tone. You are confused because some powerful stranger made you feel special for one night. That is not what happened. Then what happened? Rain soaked through my sleeves while traffic lights reflected across wet pavement in blurred streaks of red and gold. I opened my mouth to answer, but another sound interrupted us first. Tires rolling slowly against rainwater behind Ryan. We both turned instinctively. A black SUV stopped beside the curb so quietly it almost felt unreal. The passenger door opened immediately. One of Adrian's security men stepped out, holding a black umbrella against the storm. Ryan went completely still. Then Adrian emerged from the SUV. No rush. No anger. Just calm, controlled movement beneath falling rain, while the city seemed to hold its breath around him again. His charcoal suit jacket was gone now, sleeves rolled once at the wrists, silver watch catching faint light from the street lamps. Gray eyes settled first on me, checking, assessing, making sure I was all right before acknowledging anything else. Then his gaze shifted toward Ryan. The temperature in the street seemed to drop instantly. You followed me? Ryan asked sharply. Adrian looked almost bored by the question. No, he replied calmly. I had a feeling she might need help getting home. My throat tightened unexpectedly at the answer. Ryan laughed once without humor. You really think showing up like this impresses her? Adrian stepped closer beneath the rain, umbrella forgotten entirely by the security man standing behind him. No, he said quietly. I think cornering frightened women outside hotels is a terrible habit. Ryan's jaw flexed. This has nothing to do with you. Adrian's expression never changed. It became my business the second she looked uncomfortable. Silence crashed between them louder than the storm itself. Then Adrian turned toward me completely, his voice softening just enough to steal the air from my lungs. Claire, he said quietly, do you want to leave with me? For a second, the entire world narrowed down to that question. Rain hammered against the pavement. Taxi lights blurred gold and white through the storm. Ryan stood 5 feet away staring at me like he could still pull me back into the version of myself that apologized for everything. And Adrian waited without moving closer, without pressuring me, just waiting. The difference between those two things nearly broke my heart. Ryan spoke first. Claire, seriously? His voice cracked with disbelief now. You do not even know him. Adrian's gray eyes never left mine. You do not need to decide because you are afraid, he said quietly. Take your time. My chest tightened painfully at the words. Because nobody had given me time in a very long time. Ryan always demanded immediate answers. Immediate forgiveness. Immediate understanding for his bad behavior. But Adrian stood in the rain like a man, perfectly willing to let me walk away if that was what I truly wanted. Somehow that made me trust him more than anything else tonight. I looked at Ryan slowly. Rainwater darkened his expensive coat, while irritation flickered beneath the surface of his expression again. Not sadness, not regret. Frustration that he was losing control of the conversation. Losing control of me. You said nobody else would want me. I whispered before I could stop myself. Ryan blinked once, clearly not expecting that. Claire, you said I was too emotional. Too difficult. Too sensitive. The words sounded smaller out loud than they had inside my head for months. Ryan exhaled sharply through his nose. I was trying to help you grow up. Adrian's expression changed instantly beside me. Not anger exactly. Something colder. More dangerous because of how calm it remained. Interesting, he said softly. That usually translates to, I wanted you quieter. Ryan turned toward him sharply. Stay out of this. No, I said before Adrian could answer. Both men looked at me immediately. My heartbeat thundered painfully against my ribs, but I kept talking anyway. He is right. The admission tasted like grief and freedom all at once. Ryan stared at me like he genuinely did not understand how we reached this moment. Maybe he never would. People who slowly diminish others rarely notice the damage while they are causing it. Claire, Ryan said more quietly now, I loved you. Tears burned unexpectedly behind my eyes. Because part of me believed he probably thought that was true. Maybe you did, I whispered. But I do not think you liked who I became around you. Silence settled beneath the rain. Ryan looked away first. That tiny detail mattered more than he would ever realize. Adrian remained completely still beside me, giving me space even now. Not interrupting. Not rescuing me from my own words. Letting me have them. Letting me stand on my own. The realization settled deep in my chest with terrifying clarity. Adrian never once tried to own the room around him tonight. Everyone else simply surrendered it willingly. Ryan finally looked back at me, exhaustion replacing some of the anger in his expression. So that is it? He asked quietly. I glanced once toward Adrian. He met my eyes steadily, but said nothing. The choice remained mine. Completely mine. And maybe that was the moment everything changed. Not when Adrian stepped between us in the ballroom. Not when Ryan grew afraid. Not even when I learned Adrian Cross was powerful enough to make politicians nervous. It changed here. In the rain. In the silence after fear stopped making my decisions for me. Yes, I said softly. That is it. Ryan closed his eyes briefly like the answer physically hurt him. Then he nodded once. All right. No apology. No dramatic scene. Just defeat settling slowly into his posture while rain slid down his face beneath the streetlights. He looked suddenly older somehow. Smaller too. Take care of yourself, Claire. He muttered quietly before turning back toward his sedan. I watched him disappear into the rain without chasing after him this time. Without trying to fix his disappointment. The black car pulled away from the curb seconds later, taillights vanishing into wet Manhattan traffic. And then there was only silence. Rain. Adrian standing beside me beneath the storm. I wrapped my arms tighter around myself against the cold wind. I should probably thank you, I murmured weakly. Adrian's gaze remained on the empty street, where Ryan's car disappeared. You do not owe me gratitude for basic decency. The answer hit harder than any grand romantic speech possibly could have. I laughed softly, through shaky breathing. Do you always say terrifying things in calm voices? Finally, the corner of his mouth lifted slightly. Only around stubborn women. Warmth spread unexpectedly through my chest despite the rain soaking through my coat. Adrian stepped closer then, slow enough that I could step away if I wanted to. I did not. He removed his dark overcoat and settled it carefully around my shoulders before I could protest. It smelled faintly like cedarwood and rain. Expensive. Safe. Your car? I asked quietly. Still waiting, he replied. I glanced toward the black SUV idling nearby, while his security team respectfully pretended not to listen. Adrian. I hesitated. Why did you really come after me? His gray eyes held mine beneath the city lights, while rain shimmered silver around us. Because when you walked away tonight, he said quietly, you still looked like someone expecting to face the storm alone. My throat tightened painfully. No one had ever noticed things like that before. Adrian studied me for one long second before stepping back slightly, giving me space again, even now. You can let my driver take you home, he said calmly. Or you can walk away from me entirely, Claire. I will not stop you. The honesty in his voice nearly undid me. No pressure. No ownership. Just choice. Real choice. Somewhere high above us, thunder rolled softly between Manhattan skyscrapers while rain danced across the pavement like shattered glass. I looked at the waiting SUV, then back at Adrian Cross standing alone